But very interesting.
Hang on a second.
When you talk
Nigel,
about
let me
housing,
just say one thing.
Yeah.
This is an audience that has been carefully chosen, not
Very
by the
carefully.
BBC, not by the BBC, but
Yes.
by an independent polling organisation. Nigel Farage.
There just seems to be a total lack of comprehension on this panel, and indeed amongst this audience, which is a remarkable audience, even by the left-wing standards of the BBC. I mean, this lot's pretty left-wing.
Hang on a second.
Did you catch the moment when a BBC host was left utterly speechless on live TV? It wasn't just any guest who managed this feat. It was none other than Nigel Farage, the outspoken critic of the political establishment. In a shocking turn of events, the tables were turned on the BBC as Farage systematically dismantled their arguments with cold, hard facts.
To represent the balance between all parties.
It's never a great idea.
Very good.
Very good.
Very good.
Anyway, carry on.
I think it's very interesting.
It's never a great idea to
You
attract
cannot
the
discuss.
audience.
The host's confidence crumbled, leading to an unprecedented on-air apology that has sent shockwaves through the media landscape. This isn't just another political spat. It's a David versus Goliath moment that exposes the cracks in mainstream media's facade. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you
Nigel,
You cannot discuss. The real audience are sitting at home, actually. You cannot discuss.
Hang on.
that's
Let him
fine.
have his say.
No, that's fine.
watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. The tension was palpable as Nigel Farage stepped into the BBC studio. The host, armed with a series of pointed questions, exuded confidence. Little did they know, this interview was about to take an unexpected turn. As the host launched into their carefully prepared interrogation, Farage's responses began to chip away at their composure. The first cracks appeared when Farage cited Reform UK's growing membership numbers. The host, visibly caught off guard, struggled to maintain their earlier bravado. This moment highlighted a broader issue, the BBC's history of alleged bias in political coverage. Farage has long criticised the broadcaster for acting as a political actor rather than an impartial news source. He's argued that the BBC's framing of questions and selective editing contribute to a biased portrayal of Reform UK and other alternative voices. As the interview progressed, anticipation built. Farage prepared to address a particularly loaded question, one that seemed designed to paint Reform UK in a negative light. But Farage was ready. He systematically dismantled the premise, exposing a glaring factual error in the host's questioning. The bias isn't always overt, Farage has stated in the past. It's the subtle mockery of certain voices that reveal the true agenda. This interview was proving his point. The host, forced to backtrack, stumbled over their words as they tried to regain control of the narrative. Farage's critique of the BBC's coverage extended beyond this single interview. He's pointed out instances where activist narratives received more airtime than significant issues related to major political parties. Things that activists said became major news stories, Farage has noted. Did that happen with the Labour Party under Corbyn? As the power dynamic of the interview began to shift, it became clear that this wasn't just another political spat. It was a moment that exposed the cracks in the BBC's facade of impartiality. Farage, often portrayed as a fringe figure by mainstream media, was systematically dismantling their arguments with hard data and sharp wit. The stage was set for an even bigger confrontation. As Farage prepared to deliver his final arguments, the host's earlier confidence had all but evaporated. The BBC's unraveling facade was about to be torn down completely, leaving viewers questioning the very foundations of their trust in mainstream media. As the host attempted to regain control with a provocative question about immigration, Farage paused. The studio fell silent, tension building as viewers waited for his response. Then, with the precision of a seasoned debater, he launched into a comprehensive rebuttal that left the BBC anchor reeling. Farage systematically dismantled the premise of the question, wielding hard data like a sword. He pointed out discrepancies in official immigration figures, highlighting how the BBC's framing often obscured the full picture. This wasn't just about numbers, though. Farage drew sharp parallels between the BBC's coverage and growing public dissatisfaction with mainstream politics. The BBC acted as a political actor right throughout my first interview, Farage asserted, his voice steady and unwavering. He went on to explain how media outlets often become partisan players in the political game, undermining alternative voices like Reform UK. This bias, he argued, creates an uphill battle for emerging parties to gain credibility. As Farage spoke, the shift in the interview's dynamic was palpable. The host's earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by visible discomfort. But Farage wasn't finished. He delved into the erosion of public trust in traditional media, particularly the BBC. He highlighted how alternative media platforms and grassroots movements are beginning to challenge the dominance of traditional outlets. The anticipation in the studio reached fever pitch as Farage prepared to deliver his final argument. Viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, sensing a pivotal moment was about to unfold. And then Farage dropped his bombshell, a shocking statistic that directly contradicted the BBC's long-standing narrative on immigration and its economic impact. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The host, visibly flustered, stumbled over their words. Attempts to deflect or reframe Farage's point fell flat. In a moment that will likely be replayed and analyzed for years to come, the BBC anchor was forced to issue an unprecedented on-air apology. This wasn't just a victory for Farage or Reform UK. It was a moment that laid bare the cracks in the facade of impartial journalism that the BBC has long claimed to uphold. As the interview concluded, viewers were left with a burning question. In an era of eroding trust in traditional institutions, what does this mean for the future of political discourse in Britain? The BBC's on-air apology to Nigel Farage marked a turning point in British media. It wasn't just about one interview gone wrong. It exposed deeper issues of bias and accountability in mainstream journalism. Farage's systematic dismantling of the host's arguments, backed by hard data and sharp wit, left the BBC scrambling to save face. This incident has far-reaching implications. It's a wake-up call for media outlets, highlighting the growing divide between their narratives and public sentiment. Trust in traditional institutions is eroding, and alternative voices are gaining traction. The BBC's stumble raises questions about the future of political discourse in Britain. Will this lead to more balanced reporting, or will it push audiences further towards alternative news sources? As the dust settles, one thing is clear: the landscape of British media and politics is shifting, and the old guard is struggling to keep up.